Boxing has a long and colorful history, with origins that remain uncertain to this day. Some sources suggest that it has prehistoric roots in what is now Ethiopia, emerging early as the 6th millennium BC. The sport was adopted by the Egyptians from the local populace and subsequently popularized in Egypt. Modern boxing, as we know it today, has its roots in ancient Samaria and dates back to the 23rd Olympiad in 1688 BCE. With a lifespan dating as far back as that, it's no wonder that boxing, for the longest of times, was considered the sport of the world, the gentleman's sport, and at the same time produced some of the most notable and influential people or icons of the early to mid 90s. Some of the most recognizable faces of the sport definitely come from the mid 90s, whether that's Jack Dempsey, Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis, Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Robinson. You can just keep going on. Chuck Webner, all the way to today, where we have Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, and the list just keeps going. The sport has never failed to give us entertaining characters. And that leads us to today's main subject. The boxer known as Rocky Marciano, born as Rocco Francis Marciano. He was an American professional boxer who competed from the years of 1947 to 1955, where he held the World Heavyweight Championship from 1952 to 1956, and remains the only heavyweight champion to finish his career completely undefeated to this day. While there have been many others in the modern era that have come close to it, being Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and Alexander Usyk, all of which, except for Usyk, have now been beaten. Rocky Marciano could even be looked at as the original lineal champion, where he is the man who beat the man and was never beaten since, which we also haven't heard get brought up until more recently when Tyson the Gypsy King Fury came out of retirement. He brought back the whole saying of the lineal champion and brought it more to the forefront in the light. With Rocky now finishing his career undefeated, he did have 6 title defenses, and they were against Jersey Joe Walcott, whom he had taken the title from, Roland La Starza, Ezzard Charles twice, Don Cockle, and Archie Moore, who in his own right is a big name, where he was an American professional boxer that held the longest reigning world light heavyweight champion of all time, holding the title from 52 to 62. Now, Rocky Marciano is known for his relentless fighting style, formidable punching power, stamina, and exceptionally durable chin. Marciano is considered one of the greatest heavyweight boxers of all time, and Marciano remains the only fighter to have stopped every opponent he has ever faced for a world heavyweight title, and shares with Joe Louis the highest knockout to win percentage in the heavyweight title fights at 85.71%. Marciano is ranked number 14 in the Ring Magazine's list of 100 greatest punchers of all time. Those are Rocky's probably most notable accolades, but they all started from one spot, one place in the country. In 1923, on September 1st, Rocky was born and was raised on the south side of Brockton, Massachusetts. His parents, Purino Marciano and Pasqualina Picciuto, were both immigrants from Italy, if you couldn't tell from the names. Marciano had 2 brothers, Louis and Peter, and 3 sisters, Alice, Consuela, and Elizabeth. When he was about 18 months, Marciano contracted pneumonia, and from which he almost died from it. In his youth, he worked out on homemade weightlifting equipment and used a stuffed mailbag that hung from a tree in his backyard as a heavy bag. He attended the Brockton High School, where he played both baseball and football. However, he was cut from the school's baseball team because he had joined a church league, violating a school rule forbidding players from joining other teams. He dropped out of school after finishing the 10th grade. Marciano then worked as a chute man on delivery trucks for the Brockton Ice and Coal Company. He also worked as a ditch digger, railroad layer, and shoemaker, a man of many crafts and talents. He was a resident of Hanson, Massachusetts. The house he lived in still stands on Main Street to this day. During the Second World War, Marciano was drafted into the U.S. Army in March of 1943, serving for 3 years, stationed in Swansea, Wales. He helped ferry supplies across the English Channel to Normandy. After the war ended, he completed his service in March of 1946 at Fort Lewis in Washington. Marciano's amateur career was 8-4. And while awaiting discharge, Marciano represented the Army and won the 1946 Amateur Armed Forces Boxing Tournament. His amateur career was briefly interrupted on March 17th in 1947 when Marciano stepped into the ring as a professional competitor at the Valley Arena Gardens of Holyoke, Massachusetts, being billed as Rocky Marciano of West Loverfield. That night, he knocked out a local fighter, Lee Epperson, in 3 rounds. In an unusual move, Marciano returned to the amateur ranks and fought in the Golden Gloves All-East Championship Tournament in 1948. He was controversially beaten by Coley Wallace. He continued to fight as an amateur throughout the spring and competed in the AAU Olympic tryouts in the Boston Garden. There, he knocked out George McInnes, but hurt his hands during the bout and was forced to withdraw from the tournament. That was his last amateur bout. In late March of 1947, Marciano and several friends traveled to Fayetteville, North Carolina, to try out for a Fayetteville Cubs, a farm team for the Chicago Cubs baseball team. Marciano lasted 3 weeks before being cut. After failing to find a spot on another team, he returned to Brockton and began training with a longtime friend, Ali Colombo. All Well and Chick Wergelis served as his managers and Charlie Goldman as his trainer and teacher. Marciano began fighting permanently as a professional boxer on July 12, 1948. That night, he notched a win over Harry Bilazarian. He won his first 16 bouts by knockout, all before the 5th round, and 9 before the first round was over. Don Mogard became the first boxer to last the distance, full 10 rounds scheduled, with The Rock, but Marciano won by unanimous decision. Early in his career, he changed the spelling of his last name, Marciano. Because the ring announcer in Providence of Rhode Island could not pronounce it. So Marciano's handler suggested they create a pseudonym for him. They suggested at first was Rocky Mac, which Marciano rejected, deciding to go with the more Italian-sounding Marciano. Marciano won 3 more fights by knockout until he ran up against Ted Lowry, where Marciano kept his winning streak alive by beating Lowry by a unanimous decision. 4 more knockouts followed after that, including a 5-rounder on December 19th, 1949, with Phil Moscato, an experienced heavyweight from Buffalo, New York, being the first named fighter Marciano fought. Marciano, at 29, faced the world heavyweight champion Jersey Joe Walcott in Philadelphia in 1952, September 23rd. Walcott ended up dropping Marciano in the first round and continued to build a decent lead over Marciano up until the 13th, where Marciano ended up hitting Walcott with the Suzy Q, a powerful right hook, and it caused Walcott to slump to his knees, and he laid motionless over the ropes. After being counted out, Marciano became the new heavyweight world champion. Before the stoppage, Walcott was leading on all the scorecards. The following year was his first title defense that May, and it was a rematch against Walcott, who is now 39, who this time was knocked out in the first round. Marciano's reign of terror continued for the next few years, and there was no stopping him, no signs of slowing down. Then Marciano's final title defense was against the #1 contender and light heavyweight champion, Archie Moore, on September 21st, 1955. The bout was originally scheduled for September 20th, but because of hurricane warnings, it had to be delayed. Marciano was knocked down for a 4 count in the second round, but quickly recovered and retained his title with a knockout in round 9. Marciano would announce his retirement on April 27, 1956, at the age of 32. He finished his career as an undefeated champion with a final record of 49-0, 43 of them ending in knockouts. Marciano did consider coming back for a little bit, but after only training for 1 month after a nearly 4-year layoff, Marciano decided against it and never seriously considered a comeback once again. He did for a little bit do some late night appearances on some TV and did a few episodes, but he couldn't leave boxing behind, so he continued as a referee and a boxing commentator in the boxing matches for the next few years. Marciano went on to have 2 children, a daughter named Marianne, born in 1952, who unfortunately passed on June 11th of 2011 of complications from respiratory illness, and a son, Rocco Kevin, born in 1968. Marianne had several run-ins with the law in Florida in the 1980s and 1990s, getting arrested and charged with assault and armed robbery after previously serving jail time for cocaine possession. Joey Marciano, a professional baseball player, is a cousin twice removed. In late July 1969, shortly before his death, Marciano participated in the filming of The Super Fight, Marciano vs. Ali. The 2 boxers were filmed sparring, then the film was edited to match a computer simulation of a hypothetical fight between them, each in his prime, of course. It aired on January 20th, 1970, with one version having Marciano winning and the second version having Ali winning, leaving the argument to go on to this day on who would be boxing's #1 GOAT. On August 31st, 1969, the day before his 46th birthday, Marciano was a passenger in a small private plane, heading to Iowa from Chicago Midway. It was night and bad weather had set in. The pilot had only 231 hours total flying time, 35 of them was at night, and had no instrument rating. He tried to land the plane in a small airfield, but the aircraft hit a tree 2 miles short of the runway. Flying with Marciano in the back seat, with Frankie Farrell, 28, the oldest son of organized crime figure Lou Farrell. Marciano, Bells, and Farrell were killed on impact. Marciano was located in a crypt in the Forest Lawn Memorial Cemetery in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with his wife, who died 5 years later at the age of 46 due to lung cancer. Marciano holds the record with heavyweight Brian Nilsson for the longest undefeated streak by a heavyweight. He is also the only heavyweight champion to go undefeated throughout his whole professional career. Despite his perfect record and retiring as a champion, Marciano has sometimes been criticized for allegedly low-quality opposition he faced during his career. At the time of his first fight with Roland Lastarza, some experts believed it was Lastarza and not Marciano who deserved the decision. The one thing that wasn't questioned, at least for long, was Marciano's punching power. His punch was tested, and it was featured on the December 1963 issue of Boxing Illustrated, where it stated that Marciano's knockout blow packs more explosive energy than an armor-piercing bullet and represents as much energy as it would require to spot lift 1,000 pounds 1 foot off the ground. That sounds horrible. Marciano is also a International Boxing Hall of Famer and a World Boxing Hall of Famer. There was a bronze statue put up for him in 2012, which was the 60th anniversary of Marciano winning the World Heavyweight title. Marciano's legacy didn't end and stop with boxing, for he even stretched out into other media, where there was a movie made for him, or made of him, starring Jon Favreau. Yes, this Jon Favreau. The movie was received okay, but overall was not considered a major blockbuster. But it was something else to immortalize Rocky Marciano once again. The shadow that Rocky casted upon the sport was huge, that even covers part of it to this day, where people thrive and basically spend their life trying to achieve what he did with his record. Even our modern day greats like Iron Mike Tyson had this to say when being compared to Rocky Marciano.
Mike, a lot of people compare you with Rocky Marciano. How do you react to those comparisons?
Well, believe me, Alex, I'm flattered to be mentioned in the same breath with such a legendary fighter, but I really believe that I'm Mike Tyson and that was Rocky Marciano, and I'm doing the best that Mike Tyson could do. And really, I think it was a privilege to even be mentioned in the same sentence with Rocky, and I think we're just two different fighters.
Even to this day, in 2024, Rocky Marciano is even featured in the most recent boxing video game to come out, Undisputed, where you can fill in the gloves of Rocky Marciano and feel what it's like to play as or be the great boxer that he is. But this was the story of Rocky Marciano. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was good and fun and you learned a lot. Thank you so much if you made it this far. Have a great day. It's all about attitude. There's no progress without struggle, so stay in there. And be sure to subscribe for more boxing videos. Shoutouts to Wikipedia, of course, great place for information, and Legendary Boxing in Color, great source for boxing information and videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in another one.